what we see today is the worst crisis along that southern border that we've ever experienced. And it's not just the hundreds of thousands of illegal folks crossing that border every day, but to your point, Doug, this is affecting law enforcement's ability to understand who is coming into this country and why.
Joining us now is Chad Wolf, the former acting secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. Welcome to Centerpoint, Chad. Good to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me.
We heard from the New York City Police Commissioner this morning in the immediate aftermath of the New York City mass shooting that they are ruling out terrorism. They're not treating this as a terrorist incident, but they haven't ruled out anything. What do you make of that statement?
Well, again, as law enforcement professionals, you're obviously taking a look at the evidence before you. And I think what they're saying is based on the information that they have on the scene there and anything else that they have picked up, there are no specific signs pointing to terrorism-related events or warnings or a bigger plot at stake. It probably points back to some criminal activity or some other indicators there. So I think they have enough information. If they're making that statement, they have enough information to put out there. And I think this is important because it obviously goes towards the public, making sure that you're trying to allay some concerns, particularly if you live in the New York City area. You want to understand what this is. Is it a larger plot that you need to be aware of so that you can obviously alter your behavior? So coming out and saying this, I think they have enough information to make certain assessments right now.
We've heard that authorities have come in contact with a U-Haul van that the shooter may have used. That suggests to me that they may be onto something.
Well, it certainly suggests some planning. It certainly suggests some foresight. This wasn't a spur of the moment type of incident. And so they're going to need to dig into that, whether this is a lone individual or whether there's a larger group and there's a team and a support mechanism that he has. And then obviously they're going to look for motives. What is the motive behind this? Is it politically oriented? Or is there some other reasons? And then they'll start pulling back that onion, so to speak, to begin their investigative work. And again, this is just day one. So as this days unfold, I think they should be sharing more and more of that information with the public.
There are anecdotal reports. We've not been able to confirm that, and I haven't seen any legitimate news organizations confirm it, but I want to see if you've heard anything about it from your former contacts in law enforcement, that the shooter may have been targeting Asians. Any word on that?
You know, I've also seen some reporting on that or at least some chatter online. I haven't been able to assess that and certainly not confirm that. So I think, again, it's important. Look, I understand there's always a rush to try to understand what occurs, but you know, when you're on day one, we want to give law enforcement just a little bit of time to try to get the facts together so they can make some informed judgments, so that they can have those press conferences they usually have to inform the public. So I'd be careful on trying to jump to any one conclusion right away. What we often see in these cases is some of the preliminary information is usually wrong coming out of this. So we want to give law enforcement a little bit of time to do their work and then make some judgments, some assessments after that.
Great point about the preliminary information oftentimes being wrong. We know that New York City has probably the most extensive network of surveillance security cameras anywhere in the United States. Talk us through how law enforcement puts those pieces, that vast puzzle of all these security cameras, together to try to find the suspect.
Well, you're absolutely right. A lot of CCTV cameras, a lot of other technology that they have there in New York City. Obviously, this took place, in the subway, so there's going to be a lot of witnesses, a lot of firsthand accounts that they're going to try to piece together. There's going to be a lot of camera and video coming out of the subway system, so they're going to have a lot of data that they're going to have to pull through and look at to try to piece together what is occurring. And trying to identify the individual and then digging into his or her background is really going to be the key here to understand who they are, where they came. Did they travel anywhere recently? Any unusual financial transactions, and sort of their investigative work continues. And so really trying to identify who this individual is and or if they're part of a larger team or teams of individuals, I think is probably going to be their first concern. And then they'll go from there.
We heard several New York City politicians, state politicians, express one version or another of, we cannot let this kind of thing happen in New York City. But critics would say, well, you've been letting it happen in New York City with your policies towards the police department, siding with the Black Lives Matter movement in some cases, redirecting police funds, and perhaps most importantly, not cracking down on repeat violent offenders who are oftentimes let out of jail. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that's right. I think it's a little bit of all of the above. Look, when you try to defund the police and you try to restrict the number of law enforcement officers that are on the street trying to, institute the rule of law and trying to enforce the rule of law at the end of the day, I think that you're going to have more and more, not only these types of incidents, but other crime in the area. And so whether you look at New York City, Chicago, or any major metropolitan cities, crime is up. And it really began, as this defund the police movement got started in 2020. And so I think, some of these big cities really need to think long and hard about that.
I want to turn to a different subject right now, the southern border crisis. You have made a point of being an open critic of Biden administration policies that have undone so much of what the Trump administration did when you were acting DHS chief. One of the things that really strikes me about this, after all the billions upon billions of dollars invested in a post 9/11 world to make this country safer, to identify the one needle in a haystack before the attack happens, we've got an open border. Anybody can be coming in, rendering all that $1 billion of expenditure impotent, basically. Your thoughts?
Well, you're exactly right. I've been critical of the current administration's policy because what we see today is the worst crisis along that southern border that we've ever experienced. And it's not just the hundreds of thousands of illegal folks crossing that border every day, but to your point, Doug, this is affecting law enforcement's ability to understand who is coming into this country and why. And let me just give you an example. If you have hundreds of thousands of folks coming across that border in any one 30-day period every month, DHS law enforcement and other law enforcement along that border can no longer do their mission. They are simply trying to process them as quickly as possible. So they can't interview them. They really don't have time to fingerprint them. They don't have time to biometrically enroll them. And so you don't understand who they are at the end of the day. You don't understand their connections. Are they part of MS-13? Are they part of other transnational criminal organizations? All you're simply doing is processing them into the country as quickly as possible. I think that's the wrong approach. I've been very clear about that. I think you need to have an orderly process along that border so that law enforcement can do their job, so that we do know who's coming into this country, so that we can keep the bad individuals out, that we can keep individuals that have no legal right to be here out of the country. And along with that are the Mexican cartels and the illegal narcotics and every other type of crime and activity that we see along that southern border.
Did you have any evidence when you were head of DHS that terrorist organizations were trying to enter the United States through the southern border? And do you believe that that's happening, in fact?
Well, we know it's happening. We know at least that DHS over in 2021 has come into contact with what we call known or suspected terrorists. These are KSTs. These are individuals that are known to the U.S. government and that are on a U.S. government watch list or database. So we know that has occurred. They have admitted that. To what extent, they really won't talk in great detail. I believe it is north of 20 individuals, but we'll have to see at the end of the day once that information is released. During my time at DHS, yes, we saw them probing. We saw different patterns of individuals coming to that southern border that could have come from Africa, that could have come from Asia. They decide to fly into Brazil, then make their way through Ecuador, Panama, up through Central America to Mexico, to the border. These are patterns that are concerning to law enforcement officials because they're trying to evade not only detection but arrest. And the question is why? For what purpose? Is it for economic reasons to come into the country, or do they have a different motive that we need to be concerned about? And again, when you have upwards to 180,000 individuals coming across that border, and those are just the individuals that we apprehend. I think really important are the individuals we don't apprehend.
Right.
These are the individuals that have the means to pay the cartel members to smuggle them into areas that are very difficult to patrol. So I think those are the individuals we need to be concerned about, and we just don't know who they are.
Finally, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell recently said that if Republicans win back either the House or the Senate, they will make Joe Biden a moderate Democrat. The trouble with immigration is that immigration is the purview solely of the federal government. Congress has very little to do with it. Is there anything that Congress can do over the course of the entire Biden administration in the next 2 to 3 years to stem the flow of illegal immigration?
Well, absolutely. There's a number of things that Congress could do. Look, when we were in the Trump administration, we put our proposal together for Congress for 73 different changes in federal law that would help us, help DHS do our job better, help defer some the immigration fraud that we see and the asylum fraud Congress chose not to act at that time. There are things that they can do if they have the will to do it.
Chad Wolf, former Secretary of Homeland Security. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Doug McKelway, and thank you for watching Centerpoint. We hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Leave a comment below and keep the conversation going by sharing this video with a friend who needs to see it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.